I hereby call this meeting of Norwood City Council to order. Please rise for the invocation and Pledge of Allegiance. This evening we don't have anyone for invocation, so we will have 60 seconds of silence. Thank you. Now for allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Sorry. Please call the roll. Good to see you.
Mrs. Franzen.
Here.
Mrs. Hoover.
Here.
Ms. Royce.
Here.
Mr. Kelch.
Here.
Mrs. Winterbauer.
Here.
Mr. Thompson. Here. Mr. Braden.
Here. All members present. Moving on to item E, amendment of agenda. We have 3 items this evening to add to the agenda. Under item J, reports of standing committees of council, we have the committee of the whole report. Item M1, we have the resolution ordinance amending ordinances number 672021 and 172022 by adding an administrative specialist and declaring an emergency. And item 3, we're adding a communication from Mayor Schneider regarding the mayor's court. Mr. Kelch.
Make a motion to amend agenda as stated.
Motion by Mr. Kelch. May I have a second? Mrs. Hoover.
I'll second.
Second by Mrs. Hoover. Any discussion? Please call the roll.
Mrs. Franzen.
Here. Yes.
Mrs. Hoover.
Yes.
Ms. Royce.
Yes.
Mr. Kelch.
Yes.
Mrs. Winterbauer.
Yes.
Mr. Thompson. Yes. Mr. Braden.
Yes.
All members present, voting aye. Motion passes. Moving on to item F, minutes of previous meeting, December 13th, 2022 regular meeting and December 27th, 2022 regular meeting. Mr. Thompson.
I move that we receive and file the minutes.
Motion to receive and file both. Mr. Kelch.
Second.
Second by Mr. Kelch. Any discussion? Please call the roll.
Mrs. Franzen.
Yes.
Mrs. Hoover.
Yes.
Ms. Royce.
Yes.
Mr. Kelch.
Yes.
Mrs. Winterbauer.
Yes.
Mr. Thompson.
Yes.
Mr. Braden.
Yes, sir.
All members present, voting aye. Motion passes. Moving on to item I, request to address council. This evening, we have 3 requests to address council. This is the order I was given them in. First, we have Catherine Torrin-Jones from the Public Library.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I brought some visual aids tonight. I just wanted to touch base with everyone and share some information about what's going on at the library. I have been in communication with Mrs. Hoover and wanted to just briefly review that we did a story walk for the first time in Norwood at the Water Tower Indian Mound Park. And we had panels. This was the first panel that we did. The book was called We Are Water Protectors. We had the layout of each panel, and we circled the mound all the way around, and we had some really positive anecdotal evidence and response that people really enjoyed it and took some time to look at the book and become more interested. That was for Native American Heritage Month. And it was really fun. So we'd like to maybe do that again sometime in the future. Thank you for allowing us to install that, and we really appreciate it. Some exciting new things that are happening in 2023 that just now. We have hired, and he has begun, a homework helper. His name is Pierce. He is at the library Monday through Thursday from 3 to 6 to help children with their homework, projects, do enrichment activities if no one's around or doesn't have homework. Doesn't have homework. He'll read with them, play games with them, engage with them in positive ways. And he's got a little system of rewards already set up. He's a great kid. He's a graduate of Florida University, and he's transplanted himself here to Cincinnati. So we're enjoying having him there, and the kids are really reacting positively, but I'm hoping that we can get the word out to parents and grandparents and caregivers that there's help for homework at the library after school. The second thing, which I was really excited about, we have a limited space there at the branch, if you've ever been in there, limited number of computers. So I was able to work with my administrators and the technology people at the library and install a laptop kiosk. So we now have a 6-bay laptop kiosk where you can come in with your library card and check out a laptop on your card, and you have to use it in the building. Of course, you can't leave the premises, but it's been very popular, and I think it's helped a lot people that don't have to wait now for access to the internet to do applications or entertainment or whatever they're in there for. It's helped a lot with our workflow and having enough devices for people to use. So that's really exciting. And then the last thing that I wanted to update you on, we started yesterday our winter checkout challenge. So the kids have all the fun in the summer, but the grown-ups get to have fun in the winter, and we have a little flyer. You can look at it online or come into the library and pop in and grab one. Very easy little activities. If you do 5 of the activities, you get this gorgeous mug that you can drink your hot chocolate or your Lipton cup of soup out of, whatever, to keep you warm on a cold day. And you can register for some drawings, some neat prizes. So that's about it for me, and thank you so much for allowing me to address you this evening.
Thank you very much. Our next request to address council, Kate Wetzel.
Thanks, everyone. Great to see you all. I'm addressing council tonight to announce that the Norwood Gem of the Community event is back again this year. So a really exciting event last year. Last year was our first year. We had a great turnout. It was just a great community building event. So right now, the event is scheduled for February 23rd at 5:30, and that's where we'll give the awards to all of the recipients. So the nominations are open. They'll be open until February 3rd, and then all of our award recipients will know by February 10th. So if you have someone who you know who's a gem of our community and has done a lot for the community or schools or their neighborhood within 2022, you can go to norwoodtogether.org and click on the link and submit a form. And this is open to adults and youth. So, and we'll just keep taking those recipients and we'll go through them and get back to everybody by the 10th. So again, exciting event. It's free. Starts at 5:30. We just ask that you go and register. So, all right, I have some flyers too I'll leave too. So any questions about the event?
Mr. Mayor.
Is it going to be held at the...
Oh, the Ventura again.
Oh, the Ventura Center.
Yep, same.
Great
Same.
event center. And so
Yep.
might as well
So
get
pretty
one.
much the same as last year, so super exciting.
Thank you.
All right, anyone else? Thanks.
Thank you. Our next request to address council, Bishop Sonny James.
I am really excited to come before all of you because we are days away from celebrating again, right on the streets of Norwood, the celebration of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. So Sunday, we'll meet at 2:30 p.m. to get all of our instructions, meeting there across the street from Walgreens in that school parking lot. We're gaining so much just enthusiasm and excitement. So I'm really, really excited. This particular walk, you know, we've intentionally strayed away publicly. When I'm out talking to my peers, I don't often use the phrase march, although that's what's recognized when you see the late, great Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and some of his peers. And we've done that intentionally because, you know, folk are still upset. You know, folk are mad and they only remember what they're mad about, okay? So when you use the phrase march, it kind of appeals to people that are still trying to get off their chest something. And so you'll hear us say walk, celebration, parade, things like that, but it is a march. And so I'm encouraging everyone to come out and to support this wonderful, wonderful event. At our last one, we gave out special acknowledgments to our fire department, to our police department, to Councilman Gabbard, and to Councilman Kelch for their wonderful contributions, and just really a heart to really see the community come together as one. I wanted to just share with you all just real briefly while I'm trying to pull this up for you. Recently, I had the pleasure of meeting with the producers of a documentary that's coming to town later this year. And they will be doing a film on the life and legacy of Reverend Fred Shuttlesworth. And a lot of us don't recall it because it's just not told. But the truth of the story is Dr. King was very popular, and rightfully so. But it was Reverend Fred Shuttlesworth that beseeched him to go to Alabama. And he kept going after him, saying, man, you got to come here. There's some issues going on. And so Dr. King went, and the rest is history. So the legacy, though, of him just hasn't been properly given. And so we are going to be a part of them making their film. I've been meeting with them, state leaders, and at my home, at our new place, we just had a dinner with some state folks and some civil rights leaders. And we all sat around and talked, and at the end of the night, we agreed that we'll be doing a 500-man march. And anybody who knows me, I'm all about Norwood. So you can only imagine where that march is going to happen. You can take a guess. And so these walks and marches are just going to be lead up to doing that, because I really want to highlight the wonderful transitions we as a community have made. And we have made many great transitions. And so we want to acknowledge that. We want to highlight that. And we want to show how no matter what you thought about Norwood, the reality is we are progressively moving in a direction that all of our children can be very, very proud of. But for people like me, those things would not have been made quite as possible without the work of some of the most prolific.
100 years later, the Negro lives on a lonely island of poverty. I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal.
And so with that, I don't think there's a more fitting city, a more fitting community to really honor people like Reverend Fred Shuttlesworth or Dr. Martin Luther King than our great city here, because we are progressively moving forward, and I want to show the world that. So Mr. Mayor, all of council, I encourage you to come out this Sunday at 2:30 p.m. and just show a sign of brotherhood and togetherness. We might even have a few wheelchairers out there rolling in their wheelchairs. It's a family-friendly event. It's going to be short because it's more so symbolic than anything else. So for our mayor, our law director, our safety service director, or whoever else needs to be involved, please contact me if you need to, 513-487-8843, so we can make sure that we're all together. Last time we had 3 police cars escorting us and a fire truck, and so I'm reaching out to them, and prayerfully we'll have the same support. God bless you all. Go Dr. King. God bless you all. You all are welcome. Please come.
Moving forward, item J, reports of standing committees of council. Committee of the Whole, committee report, Committee of the Whole dated 1/10/23 to the Honorable Council of the City of Norwood, Ohio. We, your Committee of the Whole, to whom was referred, discussion about ordinance amending ordinances numbers 672021 and 17-2022 by adding an administrative specialist and declaring an emergency. B, beg leave to submit the following report. Council recommended adding ordinance that's appointed by the mayor with council approval. Respectfully submitted, Ken Miracle Chairperson, Mrs. Hoover, Mr. Braden, Mrs. Winterbauer, Ms. Royce, Ms. Franzen, Mr. Kelch, and Mr. Thompson. Mr. Thompson.
Move we receive and file the report.
Motion by Mr. Thompson to receive and file the report. May I have a second? Ms. Royce?
I'll second.
Second by Ms. Royce. Any discussion? Please call the roll.
Mrs. Franzen.
Yes.
Mrs. Hoover.
Yes.
Ms. Royce.
Yes.
Mr. Kelch.
Yes.
Mrs. Winterbauer.
Yes.
Mr. Thompson.
Yes.
Mr. Braden.
Yes, sir.
All members present, voting aye. Motion passes. Moving on to item L, second reading of ordinances and resolutions. L1, Norwood Surplus Firearms Elimination Ordinance, establishing that the City of Norwood, Ohio will not participate in any sale or auction of firearms. Mrs. Hoover.
I'll make a motion that we have a second reading of the ordinance.
Motion by Mrs. Hoover to have the second reading. Ms. Royce.
I'll second.
Second by Ms. Royce. Any discussion? Mr. Mayor.
Well, I'd love to say, can we have it read in entirety? Because I think every time we talk about this, I think it's important that we understand just the tragic events that just occurred are just another reason why this should be passed. Eliminating as many extra handguns that are out there is important to me. And I've said it before and I'll say it again, you know, there's too many, they're too available to the wrong people. It's almost like anybody can get their hands on a handgun. And when I say anybody, I'm talking about a 6-year-old child can get their hands on a handgun. There are just too many out there. And the manufacturers keep on stamping them out, stamping them out. Why should the City of Norwood be putting more in production? And that's what this is really all about, is saying, slow down. You know, I'm not saying that everything needs to be eliminated. I'm saying, slow down. Why? And we are a law and order society. We have a great police department. We have people that protect us. And, you know, if you have to have a gun locker or a gun room because you feel unprotected, there's something going on. We really need to readdress that. If you have to have a gun sitting in every nightstand and table in your house, there's something going on. It shouldn't be that way, and we shouldn't have children carrying guns to school, ever, ever. Our schools are barricaded. You can get into a bank easier than you can get into our schools. You know, it's just tragic that we continue to put up with how many firearms there are in our society. And if we just cut that number down some, we're doing what's right, and we're at least trying to take efforts to slow things down and to try to protect others, and that's really what this is all about.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mrs. Hoover.
I'm happy to amend my motion that we have the reading in full.
Thank you, Mrs. Hoover. Mrs. Hoover is amending her motion to have the second reading in its entirety. Mrs. Royce? Ms. Royce?
I will second the amended motion.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Please call the roll. Oh, sorry, Mr. Brady.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just a quick overall. I mean, we're a law and order society, okay? So in other words, give the guns to the police, right? Forget about us. So you can't have it both ways. If you think for 1 second that the government with guns will govern her differently if we do not have them, you're mistaken. So I feel passionate that, we're not in our lane when you want to go destroying law, donate them to an organization. So that's it. I'm not going to go on, but, if you want to say we're in a law and we're a law and order, that's fine, but we're just going to give the guns to the police, right? And we're going to be okay with that. If you think for 1 second that they will not govern differently when you do not have a gun, you're mistaken. So that's all I got to say. I won't fight it too much. I feel passionate about that as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Braden. We have a motion by Mrs. Hoover, second by Ms. Royce, to have the second reading in its entirety. Please call the roll.
Mrs. Franzen?
Yes.
Mrs. Hoover?
Yes.
Ms. Royce?
Yes.
Mr. Kelch?
Yes.
Mrs. Winterbauer?
Yes.
Mr. Thompson?
Yes.
Mr. Braden?
Yes, sir.
All members present, voting aye. The motion passes. May we have the second reading?
Norwood Surplus Firearms Elimination Ordinance establishing that the City of Norwood, Ohio will not participate in any sale or auction of firearms. Whereas the United States is plagued by gun violence and federal, state, and local law enforcement are challenged constantly to protect the citizens of the country from gun violence. And whereas, in recognition that the manufacturers of firearms operate 24 hours per day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, producing firearms to be sold, and whereas over 18.8 million firearms were produced in 2021, and the United States is the leading producer of firearms in the world, and whereas facilitating more firearms in general circulation is counterproductive to law enforcement efforts to eliminate the random and tragic gun violence with which the United States of America and the world are plagued. And whereas the City of Norwood Police Department routinely confiscates firearms used in the commission of crimes and has removed firearms from people who do not have the proper legal authority to possess them, as well as decommissioned firearms in department possession. Now, therefore, be it ordained by the Council of the City of Norwood, State of Ohio, as follows. Section 1. The City of Norwood will not participate in any sale or auction of confiscated firearms. Section 2. All firearms that are confiscated and not required as evidence, and all surplus firearms and firearms placed out of service by the police department will be destroyed in a manner that they are completely unserviceable. All parts of the firearms will be destroyed so that the parts can never be used in a serviceable manner in the future. Section 3. Firearms used for training purposes shall be under the care and control of the police department until they are deemed obsolete or not needed, and then placed out of service and destroyed accordingly. Section 4. Duty firearms of police officers who are retiring in good standing may be purchased from the city for $1 in consideration of years of law enforcement service to the community. Section 5. Firearms in the possession of the police department that are antique in nature, having a higher value due to considerable age or collectability, shall not be destroyed and may be placed on loan to a recognized museum, with the requirement that the firearm will be returned to the City of Norwood if the museum closes. Section 6. The City of Norwood and its departments or associated entities shall not conduct raffles or any other fundraising activities that involve firearms. Firearms raffle activities are counterproductive to law enforcement efforts to eliminate gun violence in our country.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Gears. Moving on to item M, introductory reading of ordinance and resolutions. Item M1, ordinance amending ordinance numbers 67-2021 and 17-2022 by adding position and establishing salary range for an administrative specialist and declaring an emergency. Mrs. Winterbauer.
Motion to suspend the rules and have all three readings?
Motion by Mrs. Winterbauer to suspend the rules and have all three readings. Mr. Thompson.
Second.
Second by Mr. Thompson. Any discussion? Mr. Brady.
Thank you, Mr. President. Which one are we talking about now? Which one of these ordinances? There's two of them on, right?
Right, this is the one that the mayor and council.
Okay, thank you, appreciate that.
You're welcome. Anyone else? Please call the roll.
Mrs. Franzen?
Yes.
Mrs. Hoover?
Yes.
Ms. Royce?
Yes.
Mr. Kelch?
Yes.
Mrs. Winterbauer?
Yes.
Mr. Thompson?
Yes.
Mr. Braden?
Yes, sir.
All members present, voting aye, motion passes.
Ordinance amending ordinance numbers 67-2021 and 17-2022 by adding position and establishing salary range for an administrative specialist and declaring an emergency. Ordinance amending ordinance numbers 67-2021 and 17-2022 by adding position and establishing salary range for an administrative specialist and declaring an emergency. Ordinance amending ordinance numbers 67-2021 and 17-2022 by adding position and establishing salary range for an administrative specialist and declaring an emergency.
Thank you, Mr. Gears. Mr. Thompson.
Move that we pass the ordinance?
Motion by Mr. Thompson to pass the ordinance. Mrs. Winterbauer.
Okay, second?
Second by Mrs. Winterbauer. Any further discussion? Please call the roll.
Mrs. Franzen?
Yes.
Mrs. Hoover?
Yes.
Ms. Royce?
Yes.
Mr. Kelch?
Yes.
Mrs. Winterbauer?
Yes.
Mr. Thompson?
Yes.
Mr. Braden?
Yes, sir.
All members present, voting aye, the ordinance passes. Moving on to item N, administrative reports. Mayor Schneider.
Thank you, Mr. President. A couple of interesting things going on. I'm sure all of you knew that Friday there was filming here at City Hall. The place was packed. Boy, when Hollywood does it, they do it right. They had 3 big meals, too. They set up meals, breakfast, lunch, and dinner for everybody. And from what I understand, I wasn't around City Hall that day, but from what I understand, you just about couldn't walk through the hallways because there were so many people here. And then I did also hear that they questioned how much of that footage will really make it into the movie. They said, you should get maybe 3 minutes out of that. So we don't know. It'll be interesting to see the movie. That's actually the 3rd movie that has been worked on here. Remember, there was a Tom Selleck movie years ago where they used the gym, the boys' gym at the high school, at the middle school, the one that has the track up top. That's a wrestling gym, probably is what you recall it as. But that was when Tom Selleck was here, and then a few years ago, just a short period of time ago, we had the Playing Card Factory. They filmed the Bruce Willis movie there. Although it wasn't, I know everybody says it wasn't his best, but I think it was a great one. They had, when you have an institution like, the bar across the street there, the Happy Hollow, it's doing pretty good. And then, of course, this is the 3rd one, so it's sort of interesting. I think it was really interesting for all the people around City Hall and the city members. So projects are moving forward. Council chambers, now they're finished, and they did work in council chambers, so you can look at what they did so far. Now we're going on with the plans. You remember that we had the architect in, the Italian architect in that's doing our council chambers. We got an Italian, but we'll get started on that project, and the goal is to get in there as quickly as possible. The ADA handicapped access to the recreation building is being completed, then the ADA accessible bathrooms are being completed there. The handicapped or ADA accessible, the ramp going to the lower level of the community center, senior center is being worked on, and they're making good progress there. And then I think they're just about finished with what was going on at the police headquarters building. PLK is moving forward quickly with Factory 52. It's almost like every time I drive past there, there's something different that makes you go, wow, how'd they do that so quickly? But they're moving quickly. The demo of the hotel right over here is going really quickly too. Okay, well, might be exaggerating there. It's taken a little bit longer, but you can tell that thing's built pretty well. So, but they are moving forward on that, and they're looking at traffic. Right now they're looking at traffic and how this could, what will the effects be of the multifamily parts that they want to put in here and retail. And then Bond Council has been working diligently with the Safety Service Director and a couple of other, I know the law department's been heavily involved in that, trying to work out all the deals, the plans, and working on everything to get that moving. So there's a lot of behind-the-scenes work completed on these projects that the law director will say, he's reading constantly and going through stuff, and there's a lot with that. We have an ODOT meeting coming up on I think the morning of the 18th. They want to come in and talk to us. We think that's good news from what we're sort of hearing is that ODOT is moving up some of their projects because of maybe the Brent Spence Bridge and some different things going on, and they're going to try to clear out some of their projects sooner than later, which could be good for us. At least our fingers are crossed that way, right? And so we're thinking that might move a little bit more quickly. That is pertaining, I think, to the Norwood Lateral 562 project. Of course, we still have 561, the other state route running through, big X right through the city. So Smith and Carthage, we've still got that one going on. And I know I was at somebody's house the other day, and their son was telling me how terrible that intersection is right there at Smith and Lafayette, and it is terrible. And please drive slowly through that area. It's congested anyways, but we are working on making improvements. And Public Works continues to fill potholes and fill that stuff in, but there's only so much we can do as we work through that process. So then JMA Engineering, I also talked to a person who owns a property right behind where we are planning to, we're hoping to move that Elm Avenue flooding when we have a 7-year storm. That a few years ago it wasn't 7 years, it seemed like every other storm. But there have been survey stakes put in there. There's a big easement back through that area, so that's good. But we're still waiting on some information from MSD. The Safety Service Director has been working to get some feedback on that, but that project is still moving forward also, and I know the people in Elm Avenue over in that area are very interested. On January 18th is the Norwood Chamber of Commerce meeting. I will be doing the State of the City report, and then that'll get posted up on our Facebook page, and I also get to swear in the installation of the new officers. And then last but not least for my reports, and I apologize that maybe I'm going on, is we have a really a qualified candidate that I think the President of Council, the Clerk of Council, and the Safety Service Director have sat down with and talked about this new position, the Administrative Specialist position, that has said that she would like to have that full-time role, and I'd like to ask for Council's approval to put that person in that position. Her name is Rachel Mullins. So I guess at some point before the end of the meeting, I'd like for somebody on council to make a motion to approve that appointment to that position. That's it. That's all I have for my part of it.
Thank you, Mayor Schneider. Mrs. Hoover.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the mayor's appointment of Rachel Mullins to the administrative assistant position.
Motion by Mrs. Hoover. Mrs. Winterbauer.
Second?
Second by Mrs. Winterbauer. Any discussion? Please call the roll.
Mrs. Franzen?
Yes.
Mrs. Hoover?
Yes.
Ms. Royce?
Yes.
Mr. Kelch?
Yes.
Mrs. Winterbauer?
Yes.
Mr. Thompson? Yes. Mr. Brady?
Yes, sir.
All members present, voting aye, the motion passes. Thank you, Mayor Schneider. Any questions or comments for Mayor Schneider? Mrs. Hoover.
Just some clarity. You said that there's some potential moving up. Last I heard, we're expecting 561 to be worked on in 2023, which is now 2023. That's very long away.
It would be
Is that correct?
561 Smith Road, Carthage. The plans will be all in place for 2023. If they can start, it would be towards the end of 2023. It's probably, if you were looking at that project, you're probably saying it'll be the beginning of 2024. The Norwood Lateral project was supposed to be going on 25, 26, and we're thinking that might be moved up. You recall, we were trying to really schedule and expedite out 561 Smith and Carthage, because we feel like as they shut down the westbound, the way they're planning on doing 562, the Norwood Lateral, westbound lanes will be shut down, and then they'll finish their work there, and then they'll close eastbound. And we were thinking, and we still think, that's going to potentially push a lot of traffic into the city, utilizing 561, the other state route through the city. So we're still working to coordinate that. We'll see how it works out. You'll hear more reports on that as we get more reports. So,
Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Hoover. Thank you, Mayor Schneider.
thank you.
Any other questions or comments? I'll Also this evening, we have our treasurer, Mr. Bonzo. Good evening.
Great, thank you so much. So we're going to have a more full report at a future meeting, but I did just want to talk for a second about how we kind of monitor the city's assets, so the cash that we have in the bank, and how we make sure that that's invested and used appropriately. So, the city has money not just from the general fund, but from other funds as well. And there's a group called Star Ohio that the state runs that basically, we can put money into that and it gets interest on a daily basis, essentially. So right now, that interest rate is 4.53%. So essentially for, every $1 million that the city has sitting there, it's like $123 a day or something of interest. So, Tim Wagers is here, and Tim, if there's anything you want to comment on, feel free. But, we just want to kind of let you all know and reassure you all and the citizens that when, with this kind of inflationary environment that we're in, we're being very aggressive to make sure that as much cash as we can put there as possible, we do, while pulling some back when we do have cash needs. Like towards the beginning of the year, your departments have lots of POs and lots of things they want to pay. So we make sure that there's enough cash to be able to do that. So we did end the year pretty well, so we'll have the full report on that next time, but about as much as we expect. I kind of said in that last report that we gave you all. So we're excited about that. And I don't know, Mr. Thompson, I'm not sure when the auditor comes back, but if, whenever you did want to do a finance committee meeting, just let us know, and we'd be happy to also come and give a more detailed report there for you all.
Okay, great.
So, yeah, that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bonzo. Any questions or comments for Mr. Bonzo? Thank you again, Mr. Bonzo.
Thank you.
Moving on to item O, unfinished business. Do we have any unfinished business this evening? Mrs. Hoover.
Unfinished, sorry. The unfinished and new always mess me up. So the MLK Day of Service is something we've already discussed. It's the DEI committee, the DEI board has met several times already. Amazing group of folks. We are all good to go with the MLK Day of Service, which is next Monday, the 16th. Expect the banner up hopefully tomorrow. It was hiding, the banner was hiding, but is already up on the website. There's a sign-up genius for people to go and volunteer. We have numerous locations that will be able to host volunteers on both MLK Day as well as throughout the week. Baby Bear, Woven Oak, Norwood Together, Salvation Army, Dress for Success. All of them are hosting volunteers both MLK Day and the rest of the week. So I would love for that sign-up genius to be full. That would be amazing. MLK Day was created to be a day of service. And I know that we've all enjoyed it as a day off, but if you could take just a few hours to help your community, that would be fantastic. The blood drive will be a virtual blood drive. And what that means is there is still a needle involved. But they're not open on MLK Day. So during the month of January, if you go to Hawksworth to donate, you give them the special code, which is also on the website, and there'll be some flyers that they're already being distributed throughout the city. You give them this special Norwood code, and then at the end of the month, they will be able to tell us how many gallons of blood that Norwood donated. A couple pieces of interest, only 5% of people who in America donate blood, and that's kind of heartbreaking since we need so much blood. My family, we are committed to 1 gallon, so I would love to challenge. That's three people. I did the math. I'm actually ineligible to vote. I'm sorry, to donate, but my kids have big fat juicy veins, and so they're blood donors. So they're sacrificing for me, which I appreciate. So I would love for us to be able to come to the next meeting and say how many people here donated. I think that is such an important thing that we can do for our community. And then to sweeten the pot, we will be having a raffle or drawing. So every time that someone donates, the Hawksworth will hold that information, and then we'll do drawings for gift cards for different Norwood businesses. I already talked to Cappies, so I know that they're going to give us some, but there'll be random drawings for folks throughout the month. So please do that. It's on the city website. It's on the city Facebook page. And of course, Pastor James did mention his walk, which I will be in attendance to as well. We're still on unfinished, correct?
Correct.
That's all I have for unfinished. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mrs. Hoover. Anyone else have any unfinished business? Then we'll move on to new business. Mrs. Franson.
I'm hoping to hold an infrastructure committee meeting. I'm thinking next week probably would be easier for folks to have time. So I've received a number of citizen concerns about Factory 52, as well as just perhaps the need for different traffic signals or stop signs or different painted lines on some of the streets, both in that area and in some other areas of the city. So I felt it would be good to try to meet and talk about those concerns. So I know Mr. Kelch, you had said Wednesday would work. Is next Wednesday still good? Or for all the other folks, Mr. Thompson, Mrs. Royce?
Yes.
Would 7 p.m. on Wednesday be good?
That'd be great.
Excellent. So we're going to plan 7 p.m. on Wednesday. I'll get the agenda out to Mr. Gears here. I also wanted to note on the subject of guns and gun violence, in addition to the issues with having so many guns and homicides and all the issues that you mentioned, Mr. Mayor, I just wanted to make a brief, sorry, this is kind of personal. Guns are also an issue for suicide. It's especially for men. The number one cause of suicide, or the number one way that young and middle-aged men choose to commit suicide, is by gun. So if you are someone who is having suicidal thoughts and you do have guns in your home, it is a good way to reduce risk is to contact someone. It doesn't have to be a government official or anything. It can be a trusted friend or a family member, and have them take the guns away from your home. Because it's very, very easy to make a split-second decision that can obliterate your own life, and that is one way to reduce that and help. So I just wanted to mention that since we were on the subject of gun violence today. So thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Franson. Any other new business this evening? Mrs. Hoover?
More cruddy stuff. Over the weekend, I was informed that there was some anti-Semitic graffiti at Limner Park. There was some confusion because Limner Park is so close to Pleasant Ridge. People thought that it was a Cincinnati park. It's a Norwood Park. Via Facebook, the Jewish Community Relations Council found out about it, and they were able to go down and remove the graffiti. And I sent an email to the mayor, to the safety service director, Clint Zimmerman, Mr. Gabbard with the parks, and Emily, you were out of town. So everyone could be aware. So Clint Zimmerman, Public Works, and Noah Powers both have gone to the park to confirm that all the graffiti has been removed from, it was on the bridge, but the buildings were not touched. I think it's really important that we acknowledge that this happens, and it did happen. It happened here in our community. That's not acceptable. That does not belong here. That does not belong in Norwood. It doesn't belong anywhere, but not here. It's also important that the community knows that Public Works will be on that. If they had known, I have no doubt Clint would have gone that day and taken care of it. And that is our responsibility as stewards of our parks and our city to make sure that we remove that sort of filth from our community. So another reminder to use SeeClickFix, or send anybody an email, phone call, and we will make sure that does not happen. I'm also going to be reaching out to Clint. I know will be reaching out to the Jewish Community Relations to thank them, and also to let them know if this ever happens again, which hopefully it will not, that he would be the contact, he would be the best contact. I'll also be reaching out to them to acknowledge what they did and apologize that happened I'm not responsible for it, but as a city leader, I take it very personally. So that's that. The other is Xavier University will be holding a inaugural Martin Luther King Jr. Spirit Celebration on Tuesday, January the 17th at 6 p.m. It will be at Bellarmine Chapel. The program will be done by Dr. Walter Earl Fluker, who's the Dean and Professor of Spirituality, Ethics, and Leadership at Emory. And he will be doing a program, and they will be blessing and unveiling the Black Lives Lost Memorial Bench, which was designed by XU alum Adoria Maxbury. She graduated in '09. It will be on tour throughout the campus during the spring semester. So I will be attending. That's open to everyone. It would be wonderful if we could show the support to that and continue to celebrate MLK throughout the week. Thank you.
What time was that, Mrs. Hoover?
I'm sorry, 6 p.m. on Tuesday at Bellarmine.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other new business? Then we will move on to communications. Item Q1, Ohio Division of Liquor Control regarding TRFO BB Endeavors LLC, Donna Cap LLC. Mr. Gears.
Just regarding this, there were notifications sent out to the city departments and the fire department, health department, and building department replied with no objections.
Mr. Brady.
Thank you, Mr. President. Motion to receive and file the letter with no objections?
Motion by Mr. Brady to receive and file the letter. No objections. Mr. Thompson.
Second that?
Second that. Any discussion? Please call the roll.
Mrs. Franzen?
Yes.
Mrs. Hoover?
Yes.
Ms. Royce?
Yes.
Mr. Kelch?
Yes.
Mrs. Winterbauer?
Yes.
Mr. Thompson?
Yes.
Mr. Braden?
Yes, sir.
All members present, voting aye. The motion passes. Moving on to item 2, Keith Moore, Law Director, regarding Law Director's annual report.
Dear Mr. President and members of council, pursuant to Ohio Revised Code Section 733.62, I am pleased to submit the attached report of the activities of the Law Director's Office for the year ending December 31, 2022. While there is no need to read the report in full at the January 10th council meeting, I am requesting the opportunity to discuss a few items under administrative reports. Sincerely, Keith Moore, Law Director.
Mr. Thompson.
I move that we receive and file the report and ask Mr. Moore if he would like to share a few thoughts on his report.
A motion by Mr. Thompson to receive and file the report. Do I have a second? Mr. Kelch?
Second.
Second by Mr. Kelch. Mr. Moore?
Thank you, Mr. President. I will just want to mention that it seems unfair to me that there are various departments have to submit annual reports to council. The law directors has to be at the first council meeting. And let me tell you, the week before Christmas is the last time after Christmas and New Year's, it's not what I'm thinking about. So it always comes as a bit of a surprise to me. There are a few things. The biggest change in the law department is the Catherine Cornelius. We have a real legal secretary there now, which is really nice. She brings an incredible amount of skill that we did not have before. T.A. Brown is a wonderful person, and I'm glad he's still in the city. But he brings a lot to this. He's got a lot of skills. He's got a lot of knowledge. But that was not really law department kinds of knowledge. And he spent most of his time doing tech support for the city. So I'm glad he's still with the city. But I wanted to thank council for approving the change to the appointments ordinance so we could create a better position, a better full-time position, and we could bring Kat in because she's really been a great help. I think the most interesting thing, I think for the law department this year was there's a property on Crown that there have been some problems with. We prosecuted charges against the owner for trash and litter and debris, and that took like a year and a half and ended with the owner served 30 days and was told, you have a month to clean it up or you're going to do 30 days. And it wasn't cleaned up, and the owner served 30 days, and the stuff was still like that. But the law department, we found, well, what's an alternative path? And so council held a long hearing and made findings that there were, it was trash and debris causing a public health menace, and the city was able to go and clean that up. And I want to thank council for going through that process. There are currently other charges pending that have now been appealed to the municipal court downtown against the owner. But I suspect that we may be back in front of council later this year to go through that process again so the city can step in and actually do something to try to improve the situation as opposed to the traditional route, which didn't get us anywhere. One of the other big issues that we've had is sunshine law issues, public meetings, public records, open meetings. I talked to the DEI committee, we've talked to the Arch Board, and I want to thank council for your, I guess, sensitivity to these issues matter. The world has changed a lot just in the last 10 years, certainly since when I was on council, that these were not, it was kind of one of those things you kind of had to, but the level of attention and the likelihood of being sued and dragged through the courts on things that really should just be easier to take care of than they are if people are paying attention up front is something that is, we're just much more conscious of, and I appreciate council and the administration and the various city offices really taking those issues seriously because that saves a lot of aggravation down the line. And the last thing, I just wanted to thank Tim Gary, and I want to thank T.A. Brown, and I want to thank Kat Cornelius. All three of them are people who are, oh, there's something, let me see what I can do. Oh, you need some help? Well, I'd be more than happy to see what I can do to help out with that. All three of them bring an incredible amount of skill and knowledge and information that I don't have. And so they've been great assets to the law department and to the city, and I want to thank them for their service. And thank you for allowing me to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Moore. Any other questions or comments, discussion? Ms. Silver?
I would just like to say thank you to the law department. I know that I've been utilizing your services quite a bit and always been very helpful, very respectful, contacting me on the weekend, off hours. I've had interaction with you and Tim and Kat and TA, and it's been very helpful to me. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Silver. Anyone else? Please call the roll.
Mrs. Franzen?
Yes.
Mrs. Hoover?
Yes.
Ms. Royce?
Yes.
Mr. Kelch?
Yes.
Mrs. Winterbauer?
Yes.
Mr. Thompson?
Yes.
Mr. Braden?
Yes, sir.
All members present, voting aye, motion passes. Moving on to item Q3, Mayor's Court.
Dear Mr. President and council members, enclosed, please find the report for Norwood Mayor's Court for the month of December 2022. Should you have any questions, please do not hesitate to contact me. Sincerely, Victor Snyder, Mayor, City of Norwood.
Mr. Braden.
Thank you, Mr. President. Motion to receive and file the letter.
Motion by Mr. Braden to receive and file the letter. May I have a second? Mrs. Winterbauer.
Yes, second?
Second by Mrs. Winterbauer. Any discussion? Please call the roll.
Mrs. Franzen?
Yes.
Mrs. Hoover?
Yes.
Ms. Royce?
Yes.
Mr. Kelch?
Yes.
Mrs. Winterbauer?
Yes.
Mr. Thompson?
Yes.
Mr. Braden?
Yes, sir.
All members present, voting aye, motion passes. Moving on to adjournment. May I have a motion for adjournment? Mr. Braden.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion by Mr. Braden, second by Mrs. Franzen. Please call the roll.
Mrs. Franzen?
Yes.
Mrs. Hoover?
Yes.
Ms. Royce?
Yes.
Mr. Kelch?
Yes.
Mrs. Winterbauer?
Yes.
Mr. Thompson?
Yes.
Mr. Braden?
Yes, sir.
All members present, voting aye, we're adjourned.